Welcome again. Bonjour, hi, bienvenue, welcome to the Forum International de la Cybersécurité, one of the most innovative cybersecurity conferences in the world. We are so delighted to have everyone here on this side of the Atlantic for the first FIC North America. So my name is Laura, and I am very delighted to be hosting this innovation stage. And we have a great lineup of experts this morning for you, kicking things off with a very exciting discussion topic that looks into the leading edge of today's digital technology. I'm talking Metaverse, Web3, NFTs, blockchain, all the fun stuff. What are the cyber challenges for an increasing digital future, and what are the new threats? So this is a super hot topic, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage your moderator of this panel, Goudet Abalé, who has worked in the crypto and blockchain space since 2017, Jeremy Clark, Associate Professor at the Concordia Institute for Information Systems Engineering, and Farid Elikoud, the Chief Information Security Officer with Decathlon. Let's put our hands together and welcome our first panelists.
Thank you, Laura. Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay, great. I'm glad to see you all. My name is Goudet Abalé. I'm a senior consultant and blockchain coordinator for Avisa Partners. Avisa Partners is a strategic intelligence firm that is also organizing this forum along with different partners, including the National Gendarmerie Nationale, the Community of Quebec, and so on. Jeremiah, Farid, I'm really glad to have you on this panel. We're talking about digital future. A digital future, it's a vast subject. There are a lot of keywords that's been, expressed earlier: blockchain, metaverse, quantum computing, cloud, etc., etc. And we'll get the chance to dive into the subject. Without further ado, before diving in, maybe you want to address our audience a couple of words to present yourself, introduce yourself, and let them know what you do.
Sure. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jeremy Clark. I'm at Concordia University, which is a university here in Montreal. We look at blockchain technologies primarily. We do research. I teach courses in the area. I have some grad students that work in the area. And we do a lot of collaborations as well. So I work with Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, which is an auditing firm in Montreal. And we work with AMF, which is the regulator of the financial markets in Quebec. And we do some work with central banks as well, looking at digital currencies that could be issued by a government.
Thank you. Farid?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm extremely happy to be part of the first edition of FIC America. We used to have FIC in France, so I'm extremely happy to be there. So my name is Farid Elikoud. I've been working in cybersecurity for the last 12 years, mainly coming from the risk management part and then expertise, and also from a public policy and public affairs perspective, working at Brussels, trying to influence positively the regulation. And of course, right now at Decathlon, which is a global company, we have been investing in Metavers recently. So it's for me a pleasure to share more perspective on this topic.
Awesome, awesome. So we have France represented, Canada represented, we have private sector, public sector, we have research, all in one panel, all in two people. So I'm really glad, and I hope you're excited as I am. So first of all, when we talk about these breakthrough technological breakouts, these new technologies, we must define them, I think, and that's maybe what we'll start with. A lot of people may confuse, for instance, blockchain with NFTs, with Web3, Metaverse. So, Jeremiah, I'm looking at you because you're the expert on this panel. How can we differentiate these different concepts?
Sure. So I'll take a stab at it. Okay, so blockchain is kind of the underlying technology. Blockchain it's kind of like a distributed database or a distributed cloud computer. So both if you're storing data, you might use a database. If you're computing, you might use cloud computing. In both cases, you're getting something that's online, computers that are located elsewhere. And so blockchain gives you a network of thousands of computers. The main difference is it's from a security perspective, is in a blockchain, what's going to happen is all 1,000 computers are going to do your computation for you. They're all going to then communicate with each other and decide whether the outcome of that computation is correct or not. And so as you can imagine, this is very slow, it's expensive, but it gives you high security. And so blockchain tries to solve problems where integrity, correctness, security are sort of the most important property that you need at the expense of efficiency. And so you see a lot of financial applications and things like that. Blockchain comes from Bitcoin, which is a cryptocurrency, but now it's used in more general platforms like Ethereum, where anyone who has an idea of some code that they want run, that can run autonomously, so it's kind of like a vending machine, you put it on the network and it just runs, people can interact with it. That's called a smart contract, so that's another, sometimes it's called a decentralized app. So that's another kind of buzzword, but it's basically running on top of your blockchain network. Then in order, let's say I put up a financial application, it's a smart contract. You don't want to be like typing commands directly into Ethereum, right? You want a nice user experience. And so what the people who provide these services will give you is they'll just give you a website where you can connect your Ethereum wallet. And that's called Web3. So Web3 is that kind of layer that sits on top where you have a website that can speak to the blockchain. It can read the data off the blockchain, present it to the user. Users can ask the website, say to trade tokens, and then it will connect to their wallet and it will process that transaction. So it's kind of like the glue between the user interface and the actual like contracts that are running on the blockchain, so that you don't even have to know that you're using a blockchain, right? If you don't have to, it sort of needs to be like kind of a background technology. And then NFTs were the other thing you mentioned. It's hard to explain, but basically an NFT is it's something that can run on top of a blockchain. It's basically like a directory where you have the owners of digital objects. So I'll say what digital objects are in a sense, but it's basically just think of like a big spreadsheet where here's a bunch of owners. They're identified by addresses, which are anonymous. And then here's the person that owns a particular thing. They're usually put up by, let's say, an artist who has some digital work. You are trusting the artist that they're just putting one directory of their artwork up. Okay, so it's not a completely trustless experience. But if you trust the artist, and when they say that this digital object belongs to this address, then you can basically come to believe that you own that digital art. Okay, and so some people are skeptical of NFTs, and some people really like them. But the main upshot of it, the benefit of it, is it's really low barrier to entry for artists. They can just deploy their digital art very quickly. It's low barrier to buy art, to transfer it. You can trade it any time of the day, just like sending an email. And then there's websites, marketplaces like OpenSea that are plug and play with your art. So basically you don't have to like put up your website in order to advertise your art or make a marketplace or anything like that. You can just plug it into the existing ecosystem. So basically, once you have your art in hand, 15 minutes later, you can have it in the hands of whoever wants it. And all you had to do is like type some information into a website.
What's the links between blockchain, NFTs, and Metavers? And then I'll look at Farid to address the issue of artificial intelligence. But first, what's the...
Sure. So NFTs run on a blockchain. So the blockchain is what gives you the ability to buy them without any friction, without any registration. You can buy them any time of the day. You don't need identities or anything like that. And then Metaverse, no one really knows what it is, I'm convinced. So it's I don't know, it's something that's in Mark Zuckerberg's head that, I don't know, I can't speak to it, but it's some sort of like virtual world. I don't know, it's kind of like Second Life or something, like Reborn. And I don't really fully follow the connection to blockchain either.
Thank you. At least it's clear.
Maybe, yeah. Well, we're not going to talk about Mark Zuckerberg here. Well, Web3, yes. I mean, there is actually, like, I would say, a real definition which says this is a third evolution of what we call the internet, Basically, it's more something decentralized and based on what you just shared related to blockchain, NFT. So right now, I mean, metaverse, and first of all, there is not only one metaverse, there are several. So we cannot, I mean, there is different landscape. It's hard to define this, but basically it's a 3D world where you can buy your own avatar, you can have your dog avatar, your cat avatar, whatever it is. And of course, thanks to your crypto wallet, you can buy so many things. So it's a new world. So many companies have a lot of expectation. Is it a buzz? Is it a reality? I mean, no one really knows here. But from a security perspective, because we are here at the FIC, this brings a lot of new risk for any company, but also for, in my perspective, for the society. When you look at the metaverse today, first of all, there is no regulation. And we definitely need to educate people on what metaverse is, on how it works. And first of all, because it goes with a third-party equipment, usually based on virtual reality, for instance. And what we can see right now, when you look at some equipment like Oculus, there is a real lack of security when it comes to your privacy, to your data. When you go on the metaverse, the risks are really much different. It's not only what you call in Europe about GDPR, but it's much more. It's not only about your gender, your name, your social security number. It's also exploring your biometric, your facial, your emotion. So it gives for those company who works on metaverse a lot of capabilities for profiling what the people are doing here. So from my perspective, the first risk is how can we educate the society, people, to understand the risk of metaverse? I mean, technology is basically neutral in my opinion. It's really, it can bring a lot of benefit for society, but it can be very harmful in the same way. So first of all, it's really about educating people. And then when you deep dive on the cybersecurity perspective, you can see a lot of cyberbullying, harassing. You can tell also about, when I was talking about privacy, it goes that people don't know what kind of data they are sharing and how they are being exploited by those kind of company who are working on metaverse.
Thank you, Farid. You're going so fast. I wanted to address the threats in the second part, but I'm glad that you did it now. That way our audience can have a better idea of metaverse and for everyone to know that is a concept that was first coined by Neil Stephenson in its Snow Crash novel, and 20 years later it's almost like a Bible for Mark Zuckerberg. So I guess Neil Stephenson has been successful in that way. That's interesting what you were saying with the whole scope of privacy, infringement rights, data collection, cyberbullying, etc. This is for data, but now about cyber crimes like hacks. I wanted to talk about the artificial intelligence, but first of all, can you tell us, is it really a thing? Like, does artificial intelligence exist, or are we talking about machine learning? And what are the differences between the two, since you're an expert in this domain?
Yeah, maybe a bit of definition. So machine learning is based on algorithm, and of course, based on data. So the more data you give to a technology, the more they crunch this data, understand, and they evolve. Artificial intelligence is basically a technology that mimics the human capabilities, and who, well, it's like a human, sorry, and which, because we're talking about a technology which will evolve and provide either benefits or risk to the subject we would like to explore. And so back to your question, I mean, for me as a security officer, first of all, AI, it's very helpful to understand our market, our customer trends, and also habits, because it's really helpful and it gives you these capabilities, this capability and ability to crunch a lot of data and to have a meta model. So it's really helpful. Another perspective for me as a security officer, we know that we miss a lot of skills and competencies on the market. So we invest a lot in automation. And when I say automation, it's also, it's both AI and ML, because thanks to automation, we can, when we identify a pattern, build immediate incident response. So for me, it's also how to answer to a lack of competencies and skill on the job market.
Okay, really interesting. So you're talking about the opportunities for you in your professional area with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Jeremiah, you're both a scientist, practitioner, could say, and also an advisor. So you have this broad view about Metavers, Web3, blockchain technology, etc. What can you tell us about the opportunities and the risks, for the scientific academic community, for the government also, and for the private sector?
Sure. So first off, the opportunities are pretty vast. Lots of people are interested in at least exploring the technology. A lot of industries are trying to do pilot projects in the area. My students have no problem, getting jobs. If you have basic development skills, for example, let's say you're going to go in on the tech side, you can adapt to it. So you can take your Java or C++ or whatever you can apply it to programming smart contracts. But there are some specifics of how contracts work that are different, and you can also fall into some traps if you sort of treat them too much like traditional applications. So that's something to look out for. And so people who have that specialized skill are in high demand. I'd say we're not maybe producing them as fast as people want, people with those skills, industry in particular. In terms of the risks, there's the risks, as you mentioned, happen at all levels. So the technology itself, the underlying technology, it's run fairly smoothly, I would say, for the last 10 years plus. So there's not a lot of risk with the blockchain failing, I would say, at this point. There are some threats that are sort of like at the geopolitical level that I won't go into, but that sometimes people worry about. But the technology seems to run fairly smoothly. The problem with it is really at the application level. So I have the idea for an application. I want to deploy it on a blockchain. The blockchain is going to guarantee that it runs exactly as it's coded. But if I code it wrong, then it's going to run exactly as it was coded wrong. And another property of a blockchain is that it generally is immutable. So once the contract's sitting there, it's really hard to go in. There are some ways you can sort of torture a blockchain into allowing you to upgrade it. But if you didn't think about that in the first place, then it's too late. So anyways, it creates all sorts of problems. There's probably in the last year, there's been over 10 hacks of financial services on Ethereum, where the amount stolen was over $100 million equivalent in US dollars. And so these are big hacks. There's a lot of cryptocurrencies that sit on these services. There's some reasons why. And a lot of them come down to just simple coding mistakes. Sometimes the companies will go out, they'll seek an audit. And so audits can only find so much, right? So even though it's audited, it's not a guarantee that there aren't problems. And sometimes one version of the software is audited, but then there's a few changes that are made before it gets pushed, and then the problems in those changes and things like that. And so having better consumer protection in that area is something that all regulators, especially the financial regulators that I work with, are concerned with. But it's not really clear how you solve that problem either. So it's an interesting challenge anyways for the next short term.
Barry, do you want to have a word on the blockchain opportunities, especially in your branch?
Well, I'm not an expert of blockchain, so thank you, Jeremy. But maybe just to leverage on this, what we can see also in Metaverse, in AI, we are back to the traditional cybersecurity risk. The issue right now, not right now, since almost 10 years, the issue is we don't know. Developer do not know how to secure code when they develop something. So we are still in the same issue. Based on this, of course, when you look at this new era of technology, we can see the same risk. It's about social engineering, SQL injection. It can be DDoS also, and of course ransomware. But at the end, I mean, it's more like this new era, first of all, is unknown, so not mastered, not controlled, but also it's something which is just bigger. And in security, we used to talk about our surface of exposition. So this surface is just getting wider and wider. So this is where I think the real challenges really sit.
Mm. It's interesting. So you're saying that blockchain, AI, these new technological objects are exposing users to new and at the same time traditional threats. So the nature of the threat is the same, but the area of the threat is new. It's a new space. That's interesting. But at the same time, and I want us to be nuanced in our position, at the same time, we heard about blockchain or even artificial intelligence being useful to tackle cybersecurity threats. So is that real? Is that a thing? And what can you tell us about it?
Sure. Let me pick up on the first part first. So the first part was are like traditional threats versus new threats. And so I think they just sort of pile on. So we see in the blockchain space all the traditional threats, right? We see phishing. Lots of people lose their keys through phishing websites. We see just straight up scams, fraud, all of those types of issues. And then you have new challenges that the technology brings. And so the main challenge of blockchain that's sort of different, there's not really an equivalent, is when I have a smart contract, it's just sitting there. It's kind of like a vending machine that's in the corner of the room. There's no one supervising it. There's no one who can intervene. Anyone can walk up to it from anywhere in the world, digitally, obviously, and they can do whatever they want. And if they can find a vulnerability, they can instantly drain it, right? Like the money's just gone, and you can't stop them. And so having that much money sitting in such a vulnerable kind of contract, anyways, that seems sort of novel to me. But yeah, anyways. And then what was the second part of your question? I forgot already.
No, I want to actually to follow up on what you just said and provide our audience with an illustration. So Avisa Partners is building a blockchain services offer with a partner that is named Red Square. So Red Square is specialized on Web3 technologies, and recently they discovered a vulnerability on a smart contract, actually. So the smart contract had 600,000 euros locked on for maybe like 3 years, and it's not actually a vulnerability but an exploit. So they found out how to exploit this smart contract and give back the money to the investors, because the smart contract was linked to a platform and the platform has been shut down, and so the users lost their money. So recently they found this. So as you were saying, the information is publicly available, and whether it's an exploit like this one with, I would say, like positive outcomes, or vulnerabilities. And one other thing is, there is this saying in part of the ecosystem that if a hacker find a vulnerability in your code, then it's not a crime, because you allowed it. Like, code is law, and you allowed your code to be to actually produce this outcome. So what do you think about it?
Yeah. So that actually is a huge debate, right? So if I put some vending machine up there and you find a vulnerability and you steal the money out of it, is that actually a crime? And so there is a case in Canada that I don't know what stage it's at, but it might go to a certain extent in order to resolve that issue. So basically, there was someone that was in Waterloo, and they hacked a service. They stole a bunch of money, and they were able to identify who it was, and so they stand against criminal charges. It also reminds me of something like, if we go back 10, 20 years and we look for an analogy, there was this nice piece in Wired magazine that I read when I was a teenager of people who hacked a lottery machine. So that's kind of like, it's also kind of like a vending machine, right? So they found a vulnerability. These lottery machines were in convenience stores all across Las Vegas, and so they just went and they hit all of them. They got charged, but they said, you know what? Like, it was programmed that way. I didn't do anything. I just took advantage of what was sitting there. And so eventually, the charges were dropped against them. So we're not sure about the blockchain space, but there is this whole this whole new thing about, white hat hacks versus black hats, and some people like draining contracts to give the money back because they don't want to go through the disclosure process because the money's just sitting there and anyone could drain it. But then the other thing about blockchain that's very weird is when you try and do anything on a blockchain, you have to tell the whole network about what you're going to do before it's finalized. So if I go and I notice an exploit and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the money because I have the intention of giving it back, what will happen is I'll put a transaction out there that takes the money. Someone else will see it while it's still a pending transaction. They'll modify it so that it also takes the money but puts it in their own account instead of my account. And so you get front-runned, just like in traditional finance with front-running. And it's a quirk of how blockchain is set up that front-running is always possible. And so that also is an added complexity that makes it, it's a very crazy space, this whole, finding exploits and trying to, for white hat hackers to try and get the money back.
Farid, so I'll ask my question again. Previously, I was saying, can blockchain and artificial intelligence also be useful to counter cybersecurity threats, in your opinion?
Well, any technology can be helpful. No, I have to say this. No, any technology can be helpful as long as you master this technology and you build it in the right way. We have already on the market different tools, mainly on AI. I'm not an expert of blockchain, but on AI that can be helpful in our daily routine from a security perspective. Like I said earlier, the AI model is really how you nurture this kind of model. The more data you give to this model, the better it's going to develop new skills and abilities to protect your asset. And this is something we're exploring in my company. And mainly, and like I said, the trigger was mainly because we miss skills on the market. There is a real deficiencies in security roles and jobs. So automation, thanks to AI or machine learning, can be very much helpful. Absolutely. This is, I wouldn't say the first level of defense, but this is something that we need to consider in our landscape.
Definitely. I mean, you raised the point that I wanted also to highlight is the importance of training people. I mean, everyone on the main stage said it earlier. In cybersecurity, there is this huge deficit of people that have been trained, that are experienced, and that can be, helpful in tackling the different issues. I guess in blockchain ecosystem, it's the same. Maybe you want to talk about it a bit, since you're also training students, future professionals.
Right. Yeah. So at Concordia, we have a security program. It's a graduate level master's that you can get. It's course-based. There's thesis-based options and PhD's options as well. And so we've had this program before I got there, so over 10 years. I'm not sure exactly when it started. So we probably graduate about 50 to 80 students a year that come out with an expertise in security. And so we cover all domains. So blockchain is one piece of it. It's an elective course if you want to learn about blockchain, but it just covers the fundamentals: network security, cryptography, operating system security, code security, that type of thing. Anyways, I see other universities emulating us now. I think we were one of the first in Canada to offer this program, but there is a demand, and the universities are stepping up. And we're now trying to filter that education into the undergraduate level because a lot of students are going to go get a job after undergrad. They're not going to stick around for a graduate degree. And so we want to expose them as well to security principles.
But I guess my question would be, how can we entice, how can we, motivate young students to be interested in blockchain or machine learning on this kind of aspects? And how can we, make sure that they would want to work in a private corporation if they have, the expertise, the technical tools, and not in, the adversity, as I think Chris Linham called it.
Right. So first off, we don't seem to have trouble attracting students to areas like including machine learning and security and blockchain, especially. I've had the first time I taught my blockchain course, probably every other person in the room wasn't a registered student. They were just there to learn. And so it just seems like an interesting topic, and students seem excited about it. They know the applications of it. How you stop someone from joining the dark side, I don't know. Like, I don't have a good answer to that. But if you're graduating students at a good rate, I think the good students are, the people on the good side are outweighing the people who are on the bad side.
No, I definitely agree. But also, well, first of all, there is good compensation when you work in security, for sure. But also, it's really about giving the opportunity. I mean, since I joined my company since 2 years, not only we are, of course, offering good compensation and hiring a lot of people, but also we need maybe to look something different than just a resume. We really, I mean, when I interview candidates, even if they don't know anything about cybersecurity, what I'm really looking for is, first of all, their interest, their curiosity, and their willingness to learn. Because at the end, I mean, what you learn at school, what you learn in your previous job, what I want, for my employee is having the ability to explore, to train, to get certification, and to stick at the reality and like being able to progress, because we know that the technology is progressing so fast. So yes, there is a lot of opportunities. We meet a lot of women, of course, in tech. So yeah, I think it's also a real challenge for a company to reinvent themselves in the way they, first of all, hire and attract talent, but also how to retain your talents.
Thank you for both of your feedback on this. I think it's one of the main issue when we talk about these objects is how can we dive as a company, as an organization in the subject when we lack the human resources to guide us, and we lack the expertise. Maybe another constraint that organizations face is reputation, image, credibility, and especially in the blockchain and crypto assets ecosystem. There is this fear that it is something that is used by cyber criminal, like any criminals in the world, that is originated from the darknet, deep web, etc. So how can we also convince organization that it's actually something that is interesting for them? And a follow-up question would be, there is this debate / issue about intellectual property infringements, especially in the blockchain ecosystem, and we've seen on the Metavers, I think Birkin bags, like Hermes's Birkin bags were reproduced as NFTs, and so that caused an outcry from MS. How do you see these different aspects?
Sure. So I would say maybe 5 years ago, I would speak at events like this, and the organizers would be like, we want to hear about blockchain, we don't want to hear about Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is this like anonymous cryptocurrency. It's used for ransomware. We're not interested in that. We just want to hear about blockchain. And so that has sort of died down a bit. So now I think most people understand that there's more to blockchain than the sort of dark web stuff that you alluded to. And so that issue I think has kind of resolved itself. In terms of the IP stuff, so NFTs are not, they're not special in the sense that they're decentralized, so everyone understands that there's an aspect of decentralization. Decentralization only applies to the transfer of NFTs and the ownership. So, if you don't have to go through any gatekeepers in order to own it or to transfer it. So that's what's decentralized about it. But in terms of the person that puts it up, that's still a centralized process. There's still someone that you're trusting, and that person needs to be authoritative over it. And if they're not authoritative over it, then it's either going to be worthless or it's going to be some pirate. It's going to be considered a kind of pirated object. And so so NFTs can't solve that particular problem.
Sorry, do you want to have a word on this aspect?
No, I mean,
Decathlon is building as Soul, I think, NFT collection.
Yeah, yeah, we sold our first sneakers NFT collection, and also we bought some. We had to claim actually our land on the Metavers,
Okay.
because just a hacker claimed this. So yes, this is. I mean, I'm happy that you bring this risk on the table because this is something that can happen, and basically anyone could claim a brand and buy a land on the metaverse. So we had to do it. But I think like I mean, if I zoom out a little bit, it's really a legal issue for me, and we know that regulation and legal used to lag behind the technology. So I don't have the answer. I don't know how company and regulators should solve it, but at least we need to be aware of this kind of risk to at least know how to manage until we are able to solve this kind of risk.
Great. So we still have a lot of work to do. I'm glad you were able to give us your insights about the direction we should take on the subject. Thank you very much. We'll give the floor now to you, the audience, for questions. I think we'll be able to take maybe 2-3 questions. So if you wanna ask something to both our experts, you can just raise your hand or come directly to the microphone at the center of the stage. And yeah, if you could start by introducing yourself, that would be perfect.
Hi there. Can you hear me? I can't. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So yeah, my question is regarding privacy. Typically in the Web2 world, we're seeing, Facebooks and everything. This is annoying, sorry. We're seeing Facebook and all of these constantly gathering a ton of data, and people are starting to get more and more concerned about these things. Now, one of the selling points of the blockchain is it's decentralized and it's anonymous, and they can't target you as an individual and collect your social information, by cross-linking different sources and everything. But everything being public, we're seeing every transaction that you're doing on every different site, NFT website, every metaverse thing that you're going to interact with. Everything is directly linked together with your wallet ID in a single ledger. What about this aspect? Like, how is the ecosystem addressing that? Because I hear a lot about, this anonymization of things, but not about, like, what is this risk?
Right. So I think you're right to point out that there's a misconception. So people, when they hear security surrounding blockchain, they think privacy is one of the most important security properties, but blockchain actually doesn't give you any privacy by default. So it just gives you integrity or correctness over all the computations that are done. And it could even be worse in terms of privacy because it's an open, transparent system where all 1,000 computers are processing every transaction. And if you want to join them, you can. Then you get a copy of every transaction, and you can go to websites and see copies of every transaction. And so if you know my Ether address, you can see all the assets I own. You can see what I've invested in. You can see my NFTs, et cetera, et cetera. There is work definitely on trying to add a privacy layer. So it's going to be a layer. It's not going to be, the blockchain is the way it works, so you need to layer cryptography on top. And this is still in development. So there's some interesting projects, like Espresso Systems comes to mind, is one blockchain project where there's some academics that I know that are involved, and they're looking at trying to do it. And you do have privacy for like little niches. So like if you want your transactional privacy, you can use Zcash. But the problem is building a general privacy platform that works for any smart contract. It's just hard because there's too much data. Even though it's tiny data because it's blockchain, there's still too much data to like throw fancy advanced cryptography like zero knowledge proofs and multi-party computations at it. So anyways, it's coming, but it's 5 years away, I would say.
Another question? And for the person who will ask a question, it might be good if you could introduce yourself also, so we know. Okay. So that means we've been pretty clear. Do you want to add one last word, each of you?
I'm not sure what to say. Thank you for attending, and I'll stick around for a bit if you have questions, and happy to answer it. Or you can shoot me an email. You can find me on the web, and happy to answer questions about this stuff.
No, thank you very much. And let's not be afraid about technology. Let's try to understand this and how to master the technology. This is really what my thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for attending this, and